everybody, and welcome to what is now, I believe, episode 8 of Clouding with a Chance of Insights, the bi-weekly podcast on all things Microsoft Cloud. Coming to you from a variety of locations this week. So as people know, my background has changed. So I'm actually sat in a conference centre / hotel in Bangalore for the Microsoft IBM AI Summit. Cyrus, I believe, is possibly in Ireland, and I think David is in London somewhere. So I will let them do their own introductions. Normally, as I said, we do a disclaimer that this is all three of us work for IBM. This is not an IBM sanctioned or supported podcast. All our opinions are our own, and we are quite focused on the Microsoft part of the cloud. However, I think because of where a lot of us are this week and what's happened, we will be bringing some IBM goodness into the topics this week. Anyway, I'll pass it across to David and Cyrus to do their brief introductions, and then we'll cover off some other elements.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Richard. As Richard said, I am in a hotel in London. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the Azure AI tour yesterday, which is really, really good. I'm looking forward just to sharing a few snippets from that. Cyrus.
So I'm in, you guessed well, I'm in Ireland in Belfast actually for a client mission. And before that, I was in the training tour, not the AI tour, but the training tour for the partners. And I have some few news to share.
Excellent. Well, I think we started off with either myself or David last week. So Cyrus, I'm going to point the finger of control to you and give us your insights on Kaito and I think some of the AI pieces that you were talking about earlier on.
So there was a tool that I was going interesting in the partner presentation. They mentioned a tool called Kaito, and it means the Kubernetes AI toolchain operator. It's an open source Kubernetes operator, and it's designed to streamline the deployment of large AI models. And what's interesting with that is they explain how when you start with Kubernetes or when you have experience, it's still difficult to know what to do with like these kind of AI models. They're often really big. They're 200 gig and more. And normally you don't have experience to work with such powerful GPUs, and there's the fear of the cost in the cloud. So this tool was created to facilitate the creation to host large models using the Microsoft public container registry, for example. And I'll share the link with you. You can put it in the description. It's more like a blog. So what I liked about that is it empowers engineers and administrators to just like simply jumpstarting a model in a day. What used to take, for example, weeks for you to learn how to play with Kubernetes, how to because what you learn with Kubernetes is usually very basic, and then you have to lean on your cloud center of excellence. This is doing all that in few hours. I have more news to share, but I will keep that for the moment when we share the news, if that's okay.
Absolutely. David, over to you.
Massive pause. Apologies while I undo my mute button. I, as said, spent a bit of time at the AI tour, and it was really interesting. There were so many good things that came out of it, and so many good quotes. I think one of the really, really interesting things for me was nearly all the organizations that shared information about their AI journeys. The accessibility bit was one of the first things that they realized brought huge benefit. And they weren't expecting that in the most part. And you thought, I guess you'd think, well, actually, why wouldn't that make sense? But it's not the thing they were looking for. People are looking for the big thing that will deliver lots and lots of business value. And the adjunct to that then is what I took out of it is when you're delivering AI, don't be looking for the big, massive things that you think will return value, right? What a lot of the organizations did, and they had a mix of public sector and FS and whatnot there, was don't make it an IT thing. Make it a people thing, right? Give them the tool, tell them to share what their actual problems and challenges are, and then use the tool to fix it. And, we've been in this game a long time, Richard, and this isn't new to us. But I think with all new and shiny things, it kind of gets pointed at the technology people and said, IT, go do this, right? And it then becomes an IT thing. So I think one of the real learnings I had out of that is make sure that, you do follow that. You do follow the change management piece. And do be aware that living in this AI era is a bit like living in dog years, because the rate of change is so much and so quick in the very short amount of time that we've seen, from Ignite through to the announcement of Sales Agent that came yesterday. I mean, it's phenomenal, the rate of change. And you talk about tech intensity and tech fluency, right? For us to be able to keep up with that. And, everyone who listens, it's a really, really difficult thing at the moment to be able to keep on top of all of this. So, yeah, stay strong, everyone.
It is. And again, it wasn't just that. There was I haven't had chance to go through all the announcements yesterday. The one thing that did pick sort of my interest, or at least come, to me, it's slightly quicker than that one, was I think it's called Dragon Copilot. So I don't know whether anybody saw this. So Satya announced it, I think it was yesterday, and it's a specific Copilot in conjunction with a couple of other organizations focused around healthcare and clinical sort of work. So I'll put a link into the show notes for that for anybody that's interested. But again, that just shows the pace of change that's happening specifically within the Gen AI piece. And again, there goes my inability to say generative AI in short form, which is ridiculously, it's even faster than the pace of change that we see within the sort of wider cloud piece, where you sort of get a release every week or every couple of days, I think. But it does seem to be sort of exponentially quicker than the sort of standard that we sort of become used to.
And I have to apologize because it's really early for you, Richard. It's I think 12. For us, it's 7 a.m. So I forgot to share something. And actually, what David just said reminded me what the Microsoft CEO, which was someone from Avanet, said, and two things that was interesting.
Was it Darren Hardman?
Yeah. And he said, don't forget the value add. That was he gives a few bullet points for partners. The value add of live demos. And he said, just take your laptop, go to the client, and because of the pace of change, just show in 7 minutes how you can create an AI agent and show that to the client. It usually works really well. Yeah. So that was an interesting thing he said that actually matched what David was sharing with the pace of change.
Absolutely. And I think it was really key about the piece around sort of accessibility as well. I think that is a sort of unknown benefit that has come out of a lot of this. And I did suggest this a little while ago, is actually we bring someone on to actually talk specifically about how that might impact them in their sort of day-to-day role. But anyway, that's a topic for a different conversation. So from my perspective, this week has been very interesting, primarily because of travel to Bangalore, which is the first time I've been to India, actually, which is weird considering the companies that I've worked for, including Wipro, which is obviously an Indian headquartered organization. Yeah. So this is the first time I've actually been to India. So it's been a very interesting couple of days, flying back tonight, hence one of the reasons why we're sort of cobbling together this session at various time zones in various locations. But there was one thing that came up, and this is why I did the disclaimer right at the start of this, is that I sat through what we call a Cyber Range experience at IBM, which is, I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, but basically you get put into this really sort of funky looking sort of modern operations center, and you role play a cyber incident. And they do. And when I say role play, I mean role play. So they've got like a news footage saying, company X has been hacked. What's happened to their stock prices? Da, da, da. You get people phoning into the command center, for want of a better word, saying, I'm a reporter from this paper. Is it true that you've been hacked? And all those sort of decisions sort of play into that scenario that they're trying to build. And again, this was a non-technology specific, so it wasn't around a particular SIM tool or an XDR solution or endpoint solution. This was just more actually about how people cope and manage those situations, and what the potential impact might be of that breach. And obviously, things like, well, do you disclose that you've been breached straight away? What's your comms policy around that? What's the steps that you might take from an IT perspective to mitigate any breaches? Again, what do you do with stock price, for example? How do you manage the SEC if you're in the US, or the FCA, I'm assuming, if you're in the UK? GDPR plays a role in that, especially if it's there's PII information that's been breached. So all of those sort of components you can sort of walk through. And we only did a very condensed version. It was like a half an hour, where they typically run these for a good couple of hours. And even in that period of time, and with sort of all insiders, for want of a better word, it was still quite eye-opening as to the sort of decisions that you have to make, and the pace of, again, I'm using that word again today quite a lot, the pace that you have to make those decisions, because things are moving so quickly. And the example they walked through actually wasn't just one attack. It was an attack that then traversed and actually created another issue. So it started off with a sort of a PII data breach, but then came down to basically a sort of a spoofing of the website and a hacking of the DNS records, which then created like a ransomware attack for the end users that were going onto the website. So it was a double pronged approach. So, from my perspective, and this was the first time I'd sat through this, even though I've been in this role for about a year and a half now, I found it incredibly interesting. So again, probably a very terrible sales pitch, but anybody who's listening to this that wants to sort of think about how they would manage that type of scenario, have a look at the Cyber Range. And I'm sure there are other places you can do it as well, but I say the IBM one, with my new IBM pin, wherever it is on this side, it blew my mind. It really did. So anyway, enough advertising for IBM on this one. I don't know whether anybody any thoughts on that one, but it was something very interesting. I thought it very much worth sharing on this today.
When I saw this, you shared the news I saw on your LinkedIn, and the thing that was standing out for me was the media management. That must be very stressful. Make it real. How do you communicate with the media that you have been breached, and what knowledge do you have of your own breach? That must be the most stressful thing, and you must go through that before saying like, oh, I want to work.
We actually have, they actually have like a little sort of TV studio attached to it as well. So you actually go in and role play being in like a TV interview with people, like asking questions about, how many records were impacted, what are you doing to mitigate this, how much personal information was shared, all your stock prices dropped by 30%, what are you going to do, all that sort of stuff. So I would imagine that for C-suite execs, that type of training or awareness is very, very powerful and important.
Yeah, super interesting. And I don't know if you've managed to do this. I was very lucky to go to the equivalent in Redmond on one of the customer executive briefing visits, and whilst they didn't do the role play, the scale of what they do there is immense, absolutely immense. And to your point, if you're going to do it, it sounds like that is a truly awesome capability that you have there, right, Richard? I mean, it sounds absolutely fabulous.
It sounds really good. And again, these are specific facilities. So there's only currently 3. We're building one in Canada, so I think Ottawa. I don't know why I said Ottawa. It might be wrong, but I think we're building one there, which is actually going to be a purely educational facility. But we can move those to a different, so run them remotely. So you don't get all the infrastructure, but you get the sort of the experience and the other pieces. So you obviously won't have a media room, and it won't be in a nice futuristic setting. And I'll put some pictures on this to show people what I mean. But you will still get the sort of basic information around that. So, for example, we could run it in Leicester, out of the Microsoft Experience Zone in Leicester. But anyway, again, enough plugging IBM. That's not really what we're here for.
But I think, it's those times where it doesn't really matter who you work for. You kind of see something and you go, yes, you know what, I really want to be able to either replicate that because I think it's so good or be a part of it. So I think it's absolutely fair, Richard. I'll give you that one.
Yeah. And again, the one I sat through was purely around this, but they do actually have an offer that goes through from a more technical perspective, through like a SOC analyst and SOC piece, where they can do it on Sentinel, for example, and look at the messages and trace, a threat through and work through that. But the one I said was much more business, and I thought, in a way, probably a little bit more impactful. But yes. So my second topic today, now this might be a bit of a ramble, and for people that have been on my LinkedIn profile recently will know that I actually blogged about this last week. And this is the ongoing spat for using an English colloquialism between Apple and the UK government over this whole encryption piece. So for those that don't know, which might be anybody out of the UK and possibly the US, the UK government made a request to Apple to allow access with a warrant or illegal process to encrypted data held within certain parts of the Apple ecosystem. Now, Apple's response was basically, well, we're going to pull one of the products, which was ADP, so Advanced Data Protection, which is not all of the encrypted data that Apple holds. So I don't think it's iMessages, it's not some of the other data that's in there, but it does impact some of the information that's stored in iCloud. And you have to opt into this. So it's not something that's on by default, you have to opt in. So Apple have pulled that, which means that in the UK, you don't have that option to go onto that service. Existing users will have it until some future date, possibly when the court cases, if there are any, get resolved. And the latest I saw on the BBC, I think it was 2 days ago, is that Apple have taken this to, and I'm going to have to go and find the web page again because I've never heard of this before. Not that I suspect I should do. The Investigatory Powers Tribunal, which apparently is an independent court with power to investigate claims against the security services. So I have no idea what that's going to lead to. Obviously, Apple have still pulled that option for this. Now, my thoughts on this, and I don't know about yours, David and Cyrus, is that I don't really care about my sort of iCloud stuff. I know people say, oh, it's your privacy, you've got a right to privacy wherever you are, etc., etc. I don't really care if somebody gets my ridiculous, stupid snaps from this conference, for example, and does something with them. I don't think there's anything in there that is compromised in terms of PII or that could be used to do anything like that. There might be, who knows. My thoughts on this is actually more what it means for the wider industry. Because if that's successful, so if the UK government wins that case and then says, well, basically now we can go and request access to encrypted data from any provider that might well do that. So that would include Microsoft, Google, AWS, etc., from the public cloud or either M365 services or Azure or whatever it might well be. Then that opens a different kettle of fish, for want of a better phrase, in that organizations are probably not going to be that happy with that scenario, because it's not just a holiday snap that might be exposed by that. It might be some sort of trade secret. It might be a acquisition that might be upcoming. So it might be sensitive corporate information that, quite rightly, they probably do want to keep controlled. So I was talking to someone here the other day who actually made a really good point, is that there are things that you can do from an organization's perspective to control the level. Obviously, you can't do much with the default encryption that the cloud providers provide to data at rest or data in transit. But what you can do is start to look at things like confidential compute, for example, and bring your own keys for some of the storage components and those sorts of things. So I do wonder whether it's not worth certainly organizations that might be concerned about this, at least starting to investigate that. And I know confidential compute is an area, David, that you've looked in previously. and it might actually be worth, again, I've said this twice in this episode, actually having a sort of a more deeper dive into what that sort of might look like if you were concerned about accessibility of your encrypted information held in a public cloud provider.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Richard, and this is really interesting. I think this is the clever thing Microsoft did several years ago, right? Because bring your own key nerfs that entire conversation. So yes, everything's encrypted at rest. Yes, everything's encrypted in transit, on the Microsoft backbone, and so that's fine. And if people get physical drives, it's all sharded and you can't see it, right? As soon as you bring your own key, it's not a Microsoft conversation anymore. Microsoft can do nothing about it, right? It's you and your key, which kind of is good and bad in some ways, because then the legal conversation and the demands are to you as an organization, not the cloud provider, because you're, to use a horrible phrase, you're holding all the keys, right? So, so I think Microsoft, from a business perspective, and I think the challenge we have here, obviously, a lot of this Apple stuff is sort of targeted predominantly at normal users, inverted commas, and businesses happen to use it, is my horrible analogy.
I just remembered I went on mute because I was talking to Cyrus before we started recording. I'm in Bangalore, and Bangalore is famous for probably a few things, but one of the most things is the traffic. So all I can hear in the background here, I don't think you guys can, is beep, 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 beep of car horns. So I keep putting myself on mute, which I don't normally do. And now I've forgotten what the question was that I was going to answer. But
customer managed keys, right? And how?
Yeah.
And then Apple, and are they really an
yes,
organization?
Yeah, precisely, because it is, all the press so far has been around, it's sort of your personal information as a an iPhone user or an Apple user. It's that, it's what you've stored in iCloud. However, IBM issue us iPhones, so I have got pictures from today's conference sat on the iCloud, and probably other stuff that I've not even thought about sat there. So again, it is still that conversation, I think.
Yeah, and it's the way Apple answered was, I think, a masterclass. They didn't really said yes. They find a way to just turn this ADP off, and they didn't the initial request, because it's not official. This is what we hear. There's nothing official. That's why it's probably illegal, but I'm not an expert in that. But the request was more to have a backdoor, which is more dangerous, giving the wrong signal. Because if you give a backdoor, then it's something like that can be exploited by non-government. So the government wants something, they make a backdoor, and then you lower the posture of security. And then if it's approved, every country will follow. And even, for example, in France, because you said it's a UK thing, but no, in France, Signal, the text messaging app, said that they're going to leave France on any country that will comply to that kind of a request, governmental request, because it's going to lower the posture. And again, I agree with you, Richard. It's not about what I have on my phone, my pictures, my vacation, etc. It's more the dangerous mindset of doing bad security decisions for a good reason. I agree that some stuff should be like, we should help also the government, secret services, and investigators. But there's ways. It's not just creating a backdoor. Anyway, I can digress too much.
So I think that there was an interesting point there, Cyrus, in the fact that it's not been, the government isn't talking about it, and apparently, I'm not sure I read this correctly, so I will have to go and double check, and if I'm incorrect, I'll do an amendment on the stream. That the UK government is actually banned from making some of these announcements. There is a law that says you can't talk about some of the stuff that we're doing, so that's why it's like radio silence from the UK government on this.
Interesting. Super interesting.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. With super injunctions have sort of gone out of fashion a bit now, but they were a big UK thing where you can't mention something apart from in Parliament, because you had parliamentary privilege to talk about it in Parliament, but you couldn't even say that there was an injunction about you talking about something. It was like that bad. But anyway, that is a massive direction, because that's not even IT. Anyway, Cyrus, you said you had another topic.
Not topics. There's plenty of headlines, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to be really fast. If you want to interact with anything, just stop me. So now we said we're not going to talk about IBM, but I think this news is really cool. I know we know it's from 1 year, but it's official. HashiCorp is officially an IBM company. Some people are happy, some people are not happy. I'm excited. I'm selfishly excited. I love Terraform. So more excuse for me to learn that. And I didn't want to learn Bicep. I love Microsoft, but Bicep was not my cup of tea. Something that was directly impacting me for some deals. Outlook and Defender for Office 365, they announced that there's an official release of the built-in report button for the scamming and phishing emails. So this button exists since a while in the new Outlook version. It's a version that I don't really appreciate, but it will be the official one. But now it's the same experience amongst all the platforms. So in the web, new Outlook, classic Outlook, Outlook for Mac, Outlook for Android on iOS, we have this button now to report emails and giving the email to the Defender for 365 dashboard to help investigating such problems. A tool I wanted to share with you is MSFTRecon from Jason Hedix. I'm going to share the link with you, Richard. What's interesting and scary about that tool, there's plenty of tools to do some reconnaissance on your 365 and on Azure tenants. But this one in particular is a bit scary because it requires no authentication. So without any form of authentication, everyone, we can spy and see any kind of misconfiguration in any tenant in the world. For example, I can say, in the example you use Tesla, you can say, okay, I'm going to give the Tesla domain. You have all the subdomains. You have the MX, so it's the public DNS record, of course, but you have also information like if they use on-premise Active Directory or not. So you can target your attack. If there's no for example, AD, you don't use a golden ticket or Kerberos attack. You focus on all the cloud attack, etc. So it's good and bad. It's good also for everyone to understand what misconfiguration we have to mitigate quickly, because everyone can have access to that information. That's the bad news. Everyone now is empowered to carry a more targeted attack. And I don't want to talk too much. I'm going to not say that's too news. It's too much. One I wanted to share quickly. If you're a gamer and if you're from my generation or above, if I say the word Command & Conquer, it should ring a bell. So Electronic Arts released a few days ago the official source code of some of the early games like Red Alert on GitHub. Wow. And they refuse pull requests, so it will stay the same. You can do a fork, and there's already plenty of people doing mods. It's all the C++ file, all these DLLs and whatever. It's super cool. So I'm going to have fun checking that those are some files and how the game was built.
That's awesome. It reminds me of that. No, not the games. So back to the thing you're saying in terms of being able to poke at things. Is it L0PHT? Is that what it used to be called? Do you remember that back in the sort of NT days? Or I'm going to have to look it up. But very, very similar. It was a set of tools that enabled you to do things that you probably shouldn't be doing. So
I don't know that tool. I have to check that tool. But this one is now anyone can use it. It's just a script you launch, and you have all the information about the person. So on even on LinkedIn, I shared the post. The screenshot is scary. All the information you have accessible in like few seconds. It's actually scary.
Interesting. Anything from you, David, to wrap us up for today's episode?
No, I think I've spoken plenty. Thank you very much, Richard.
Excellent. Well, again, as usual, thank you, David and Cyrus, especially for today, because I know it is early in both of your respective locations, and I get the joy of it being 12:30, 1 o'clock in Bangalore time. Thank you very much to all the listeners and watchers. Again, please, and I probably should have done this earlier, you like, subscribe, follow, rate, whatever the mechanism is on your platform of choice. It really does help us understand what we're doing and help us improve on a week-to-week basis. Again, so all I can say now is thank you, and we will catch you in 2 weeks' time.
See you.
Thank you.